Hello and welcome to Through the Looking Window, brought to you by Open Reflection, where narrative ends, reflection begins, and the path forward becomes a little clearer. I'm your host, Brian Garceau, and thanks for joining me today. Water and water rights have been a struggle in Texas throughout history. What we have seen in many Western genre movies continues to be played out in modern times. The Colorado River traverses northwest to southeast, making its way through significant portions of Texas, including where we live in the central region of Texas known as Hill Country. Many communities have settled along the Colorado. They draw water directly from the river, treat it, and then deliver it to various types of customers. These water utilities and sewer utilities perform that service for specific areas of the state. In today's episode of the podcast, we will review a situation related to our water utility that has been getting significant attention for several years and may finally now be coming to a head. To help us understand this situation better, we welcome Jeff Walker back to the podcast, former board member of Windermere Oaks Water Supply Corporation. Jeff, again, thanks for joining me to discuss this important topic.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's obviously a pleasure to be here to provide our community with a greater understanding. Just correct the record that has been put out there on many of the social media platforms, and trying to keep the members informed. And that's basically what I think what you've tasked these podcasts to be, was to be provide a different perspective, provide not just opinions, but actual facts about what took place on these particular topics. And I'm gonna start getting really bold on these things if you continue to invite me on these things, because much of the narratives that's being spread on Nextdoor and out there in the community, a lot of it's false, a lot of it's fake news. I know we talked about fake news at the last one, but it truly is, and it's disinformation, and it's actually hurting the community and not providing the accuracy that you needed here.
Yeah.
A direction or the type of decisions that when I was in the board, when we were on the board together, that we needed to make. And this is one of those. How we move forward with this CCN application and what we did and why we did it. And again, if anybody wants to talk to me about specifics, 512-799-7566 is my number. People know where I live. Come on over, knock on my door. I'll be more than happy to sit there and go through a file cabinet of documentation that I have on various subjects related to the water company. This was before I was on the board or when I'm on the board, and such. So
Right.
With that, I don't know where you want to start on
Sure.
this particular topic. I do want to make, Brian, if I could,
Sure.
The water that we're getting is from the lower Colorado River. That's basically starts as a little creek up in Abilene, and then as it flows through the Hill Country, it creates this wonderful resource that was provided to Central Texas. I have done a lot of study of the lower Colorado when I first moved down here, because I was amazed at the dam systems that they have that were put in place in the 30s and 40s to generate electricity for the rural areas and to provide water resources and for flood control.
Right, there you go.
And protection, exactly, and for flood control. My past career, I was, I shouldn't say past career, but one of the companies that I started and owned, I was building boat docks for 8 years on Lake Austin, which is part of the lower Colorado. It's the next lake right after. I witnessed the flooding and the flood control that these guys do firsthand in building on that lake. If I don't know, I can't remember exactly when it was, but the last time Lake Travis was full, when they opened up, 4 or 5 of those floodgates, that lake rose about 10 to 12 feet right outside of Mansfield Dam, and it rose quickly because I had equipment on the lake, building docks, up in that area. This would be around Murfin Road and then River Road, which would be somewhere around in Apache Shores, if anybody is familiar with that. I've seen my boat docks that are sometimes 2-story, have the floodwaters rise to the 2nd story. That's 10 or 12 feet high. I used to live on Lake Austin. I was halfway down the river system, and it would rise 2 to 3 feet from, at my house on my property. And that's 7 miles down from the Mansfield Dam. So it was incredible to watch, and it allowed me to do some more research on it and such. So I don't have all the facts on when everything took place, but I understand what they did and such. So your upfront analogy was, down in Central Texas was really important to the communities here for not only flood control, water management, and then power. Yep. If you read any history of the city of Austin, all the floods that took place prior to the dams going in, it was amazing. Yeah. Just amazing how the fields, how the agriculture would just get obliterated with, these torrential storms that would take place. I came from Chicago, and you from the Northeast, you probably didn't witness any of this, and neither did I till I first watched a big heavy rainstorm, just indulge Barton Creek and all the creeks that fill into this river system. It was amazing to watch. And I'm like, I've seen that on TV, but now I was witnessing it firsthand.
It's much different.
I had a friend of mine get swept away in one of those flash floods over the crossing right there on 2222 and 360. She went over, and she got rescued, thank God, but she lost her car. It's just amazing. Water is a very powerful thing in so many ways.
It is.
That was a good intro to it.
No,
but let's talk about. Or go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Before we continue, I do want to, for folks that aren't familiar with much of this, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview and some definitions. But I do appreciate what you said early on. Us meandering around a bit in these discussions is perfectly fine, because there are a lot of side issues. There are a lot of things that we never have an opportunity to go into in any depth at all in any other venue. And that is the reason for these things, because the more people know, the more breadth that we provide to these topics, the better people will understand, and maybe a little more forgiving they'll be in the decisions that people are making on their behalf in our democratic little society here. So with that,
good point.
I'll just go ahead with this little bit of a blurb here. Hopefully it's not too long, and then we'll get into it. All right, so as far as some definitions here, the Texas PUC managed what service specific regions throughout Texas. They do this issuing what is called a CCN, or a Certificate of Convenience. This authorizes a public utility to exclusive right to provide water and sewer utility service to a specific geographical region. Just to help focus our discussion today, we should also note that many of these utilities are actually quite small, serving tiny communities of just a few hundred single-family homes. There are hundreds, maybe thousands across Texas. Many are member-owned, member-controlled, as we like to say, with their own facilities, and usually a contracted operator, which many times themselves are also tiny. Unfortunately, this can also present more opportunity for those great stories we watch played out in movies, that old apparent affinity to fight over control of this precious resource. And so for our situation, a little bit of history here, the CCN, the amendment to the CCN, I should say, that we're going to look at was initially filed 15 October of 2023. It is PUC Docket, for those who like to go look that stuff up, 55840. The amendment to extend the WOWSC service area to add 4 platted single-family homes sitting on 18 acres just across a small state highway abutting north of our community. The CCN, I'm sorry, that's south, isn't it? The CCN, yeah,
Okay.
it specified minimum or no impact to the current services. It stated at the time that the system had the capacity to provide service to these future homes with no improvements required to either service type. There were at that time 249 stated water connections. The amendment does not cover the number of sewer connections, for what it's worth. And when the CCN amendment was submitted, the homes were at that time in development. The developer was to pay for the extension. The developer applied directly to Windermere Oaks Water Service Corp. For extension of the services, and that developer's application is included as an attachment to the request to amend the CCN. So there's a lot there, but I thought it good to frame that in that way. So Jeff, where would you like to go from here?
Well, that's a good intro because you took a little bit of my thunder away
Yeah.
because people need to research that application that went in and around the October time frame. I had taken notes on that. That it was the correct filing number 55840 was the amendment to our CCN application. If anybody would like in the community to get a copy of the CCN, I'm almost positive, don't hold me to it. I think it's probably on our website. It's probably included in our tariff documentation. So it'll be one thing that everybody should check out. Everybody within the airport and within the current airport boundaries, and where I live, mine's a new development. Mine was included. My acreage was included a while back, and all the housing or all the buildable acreage within inside of Windermere is part of the CCNN. So it was pretty comprehensive how it was originally, defined on it. These 4 lots that the developer, Jim Madigan Homes, requested water from was actually approved by the board in May. I do believe it was May of 2022. Mm-hmm. It went to a board vote, and the board at the time approved the expansion to allow Jim to obtain water services. And I do believe it was only water only, but don't hold me to that. That's all I have focused on. And you're right, it was 4 lots. And I think that's really, really key for people to understand the 4 lot, type of thing. It wasn't 40, it's not 400, it's 4 lots. And the actual CCN controls that, which means those people couldn't go out and say, oh, well, we're going to buy another 6 acres to the east of us, and we're going to put another 4 homes on there, and we're going to provide them water service under this, extended application. Right. That you can't do. It's 4 lots. It's defined geographically, just like you pointed out. So it was 4 lots. The Madigan group did. I think the issue that really got under people's riff was the fact that when it was brought up for a board vote in May, it was discussed in an executive session. I was there. I went totally, after Joe on this one. Joe was the president at the time, because they went to executive session. They came out and they voted on it. And we really didn't have a lot of input. There was really not a lot of input from the community and a lot of knowledge about what was going on. No, we're going to expand. It's going down to Excelsior. Here's what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah. Pass, move on to the next thing. And I think people were stunned. I know I was. I raised a big stink about it because I was like, wait a minute, you just can't do that. You go into executive session, come right back out and vote. No community input. We didn't get a chance to see it. At least I didn't feel I did. Maybe I missed something in some of the documentation, which could have happened, but either way. And then the next day, there were excavators out there digging a trench down Excelsior to put this water line in. And I thought that was kind of rude. I'm like, boy, the next day, which means you probably had it all planned out that this was going to take place. The board was going to vote yes. No community input. The next day, they're digging lines out there. Mm-hmm. I brought it up many times. People can check the record when the line was being dug. There was no safety standards out there. They had open trenches. I brought it up. It was on our property, and that was a liability to the corporation until many members, if somebody was to walk around late at night for some odd reason out on a walk in this dark community out here at nighttime, fallen in a trench, break a leg, we were liable for it. That contractor should have put up security fencing around it, that orange fence, done a lot more to protect the citizens while they were doing it. Another thing that kind of chapped my ass at the time. The line got put in. It took about a month for them to, dig that amount, that length down there. I know there's been some discussion by people about, oh, it was a 5-inch line. Why was it so big? Blah, blah, blah. I don't think that they had the best plan in place in order to service this. In my discussion with some of those people, I don't know why they put such a big line in there. That could have been a previous operators. That could have been George's, call was to make that. Why he did, I don't know. Why there's a fire hydrant at the entrance. Why was that scoped in there? Maybe because we had an opportunity to put it in there. I never saw the plan set. I work in the building trade. I've done this. I would be able to review a plan and say, hey, something's not right here. There's many of us in the community have the same, similar knowledge, but we never saw anything. So I don't know why that is. People complained about the pressurization of it. Oh, you're going to pressurize a 5-inch coming from our standard 2-inch line. Well, I've talked to a lot of people about that in the water business and in, engineers and such. There'd be no pressure differentiator in there. Why you put a 5-inch line doesn't matter if it connects up to a 2-inch line. A lot of people do that. As a matter of fact, if it was just the opposite, then you'd have a pressure variable because you'd have a 5-inch line squeezing down to a 2-inch line. Think about when you take a hose and you have a 3/4-inch hose and you put it down to a stream of water out of a 1/4-inch line. What happens? Your pressure increases because you got so much pressure on the back end, coming from a bigger pipe into a smaller pipe. That's just common sense and physics.
That's hydraulics. So it's physics.
Yeah, it's hydraulic. Yeah, it's flow technology, fluid technology, as they call it. So, anyways, you were right that got filed in October of 2023. It was rejected by the PUC sometime in late December of 2023. It was submitted by George. A lot of the information that was submitted at that time, I was on the board. I was only a single member. I was not part of the majority at the time. Rich Schaefer and Dorothy Taylor were still on the board. The application was submitted at the time with a full board. Jeff Anderson, myself, Renee, Rich Schaefer and Dorothy were all part of that. These are a lot of things that we had discussion, that not too much discussion could go on because it was approved in the previous board in 2022. The initial application was rejected because it didn't have all the data that was required on the CCNN. So there was a lot of missing data. Was one of the big reasons after we talked to the PUC after we took it over. In January of 2024, Rich Schaefer chooses not to sign up to run for the board again. Dorothy Taylor resigned. This application was sitting out there for a while. We basically made a decision to take it over. As a matter of fact, we were legally required to take it over. We couldn't just abandon it and say, oh, Jim, you're not going to get your water. Why? Because we went to our legal counsel and asked them what would happen if we did that. We asked that in March of 2024. Well, right out of the gate, Michael Parsons, the attorney who headed this up, said, you're going to get sued. You will get sued for breach of, it's basically a breach of contract if you don't at least go through the steps of applying for the CCNN, because it was approved for the expansion by the board back in 2022. This was illegal advice we were getting. This was not a Jeff Walker opinion like Danny Flunker and Patty and all those group of people think that it was. It wasn't my decision on that. It was coming from legal counsel. You can check the legal record. You can check Carlton's exit letter when he talks about what has happened with the CCNN and what you could be facing. You could call Aaron Hentges about that and talk to her. You can talk to Michael Parson. They are still available to us to get clarification on it, on what their actions were. So it wasn't me that pushed this thing forward. It was, I got advice from the legal from the legal team. So we took it upon ourselves to look at the application. Michael Parson was the lead attorney on it. It needed to be filed through a law firm. That's the legal process way that the PUC likes. There's a lot of intricacies to filing within the PUC, as everybody knows. It's not an easy task. It's interesting. I'm going to divert that for a while. The people, when the rate appeal case was going on, does everybody realize that we had an attorney on that? We had that an attorney was working that. Why? Because you have to have legal counsel, whether you're filing something or whether you're defending something. Well, the ratepayers had an attorney on it. The Windermere Oaks Water Supply Corporation had our attorneys on it as well. The attorneys are responsible for submitting things within the PUC when they get to be this complex. Yeah, sure, you can submit anything up as a layman, which I have done in the past, but at the end of it, it kind of starts to need to get put into a legal document. Sure, the compliance filing was filed without an attorney's signature, but that wasn't as complex as what a CCN application could be. So it did require a legal review and legal understanding of all the aspects of it. And Michael Parsons took the lead on that. He did several submittals. And in early summer of 2024, the members intervened. There was a member intervention that came across, and it's in the record. Everybody can go look at it. Members intervened. There were 5 members who came to the table and submitted basically kind of a grievance about this. They really didn't want it to happen. And I think that's very unfortunate for the community because now we're under a lawsuit. This is 4 lots, people. This is 4 lots that all we had to do was submit water to them and we would have been done. Regardless of who it is, if it was Jim Madigan or whoever it is, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is 4 lots. And at the time that we had legal involved, we were spending money on this. If we would have just streamlined it, got it done, giving him his 4 taps, not only is it just 4 taps, we could have got revenue from it. We could have charged him 4 tap fees. We could have got revenue for 4 additional people. Now, keep in mind, he only built 1 house out there, so it was only going to be 1 tap. When are the 3 other ones going to come on? Who knows? But at least you could have maybe gone back to the Madigan homes and said, hey, why don't you buy all 4 taps now? June of 2024. I mean, you were looking at the finances. We were losing $10,000 to $12,000 a month. So this member intervention came in, and it was a joke. And I'm sorry, I'm going to call out the people about that. It was a joke. There were 50 plus questions that were submitted in the intervention that did not relate to the CCNN. Look at the legal response and look at what the PUC finally took out of that 50 questions. There was maybe 10 questions that were related. My point on this whole thing is answering those other 40 questions cost us money because we had to do the research. We had to go find information to negate that question, and they were ridiculous. I wish I'd done my homework. I could have pulled out that filing and read some of them. 40 of them were just like not even related to a CCNN about an application. That cost us money, that intervention, and it cost us time because now the PUC was going to look at what the membership had to say on it. And we're like, wait a minute, it's just 4 taps. And we were pretty close in the summer of 2024 to getting this thing done. It was, it was a thing that we inherited. I inherited it as a board member. You inherited it. This was done in March of 2022 and submitted under a previous board. Yes, I was a board member, but I wasn't a ruling factor. Check the record. In an October meeting, I tried to get down. I tried to say, is the best person to handle this application George Burris? And the board said, yep. I'm like, what did you want me to do? I couldn't do anything else. Hey,
so if I could,
was 3,
yeah,
there was 3 against 2 of us.
Right,
go ahead.
Right, gotcha. I'm interested in, how this came about. Look at the CCN, the original, and I did mention the attachment, which was the application that the builder actually submitted. So is
Right.
that the legal agreement? Is that the binding part of this? Or is there something else that happens that says Windermere Oaks absolutely positively, assuming this CCN has agreed to this amendment, you are going to be able to have water for your buildable property?
In May, I don't know all the legal aspects. In May, it came up for a board vote, May of 2022,
Mhm.
Brian, and it was voted on to provide water services to these 4 lots.
Okay.
Now that kicked off this application process. Why it took a year to get that done is beyond me. Again, didn't come on the board until 2023 in February of 2023, but that was already approved by the board in 2022.
Okay.
And the application process to apply for the CCN didn't take place until October
Okay.
of 2023.
Yeah.
The initial review, and that's what's found in 55840. Why it took so long, I don't know.
So
Why we didn't get legal involved, whether at that time it was our former legal counsel, maybe it's because they didn't want to spend any money, but why they had George run with this was beyond me. And I fought it. I'm almost positive. I shouldn't say I fought it. I'm almost positive in October of 2023 meetings, I was like, really? George's the right guy to do this? Should he not have board oversight? Should there not be a board member tied to it? And there were other board members on there. I was just one of 5. I was not an officer. I was one of 5 in 2023.
right.
So, for me to get chastised in the community when I had no authority in this, I was just a voice, like you say, a volunteer voice there, just making sure we were doing the right things where this thing wouldn't get hung up and such, and just flow through the process where we wouldn't get hit with, $30,000 legal bills as we fought it. Or I shouldn't say we fought it, as the membership fought it, but it wasn't filed until October. Again, why? I don't know.
Right.
Just don't know.
So,
I was 6 months being on the board. I was 6 months being on the board, fighting everything else,
right.
that was, decisions that were being made about redoing an internal storage tank and such like that, which I thought was a ridiculous project, which eventually got shut down.
Yeah.
But, that's
know,
what we were facing.
the reason I started with that question, of course, I'm not from here, right? I'm from somewhere else, but
Mhm.
I'm just curious about how these things start. And, if I were to improve a piece of property, I would pretty much expect that I'm going to need water and sewer. And where I come from, you're either hooked into the town or you provide your own. And very common to build a leach bed. I've done it with my dad. It's no fun. A lot of crushed stone, raking, stuff like that, and such. And you drill your own well and you're good to go. There's no problem up where we live.
Right.
Up here is a different story because I don't know how many thousands of feet it is underground where you finally tap into an aquifer or you're going to get surface water.
Right.
So my point is, if I'm a contractor and I want to improve a piece of property and I know I have to provide this service, would I not make sure, very sure, that I have a solid contract with a provider of that service before I improve the property? I'm curious because I see how the timing is, from what I've been able to find for documentation. It may not be all of it, but what is your understanding as to what actually happened here? Did that developer actually have that type of agreement in hand before they maybe went ahead and invested a lot of money?
Well, from what I know and from my research and what I was told, um, in the board meeting on May of 2022, it was voted on to provide water services through the WOWSC to these 4 lots.
Okay.
It was voted and passed. That I looked at it, and so did our legal people. And again, taking legal advice, not a Jeff Walker advice, because I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one. In the community, we took that as being okay, and so did our law firm saying, That's a contract right there that you're going to provide water, that the WOWSC voted on providing Madigan homes with water service to these 4 lots.
Right.
And here's how they're going to do it. They're going to run a line down Exeter and tap into the water line right there. You know, what was done from there? Don't know. Wasn't on the board, wasn't privy to it. Wanted a better understanding at that May vote, you know, at the time, because it was done behind closed doors, a lot of, you know, handshakes or whatever it was. Maybe it was done on the up and up. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But all I know is when I got on the board, when I was handed this mess, when George Burris and his water management team left in January of 2024, we were left with it. Mm-hmm. And we were left with this filing that was inaccurate. We took it to our legal team, to Carlton Group, in the 1st of March. And we said, what do you want to do on this? What are we obligated to do? And they started the filing process. They too believed that we had a legal requirement to provide service, water service, to these 4 lots. That's what I went on. Was that board vote a good enough contract? I'm not a contract guy. Have I done in my home building experience, tapped into water lines? Yeah, but I'm not a developer, never have been a developer. I build a single family home, and just like I recently did, I take where my water line comes out and I say, here's where it's going to go. Provide me a meter box to this location. And that water utility either gives me a hookup or they give me a water meter box to connect into. Mm-hmm. So I've never had to do a big development because I'm not a developer.
Right.
So, you know, did it appear to be done correctly from the beginning? Yeah, it looked like it. I didn't get involved. I wanted to. You know, I have a little bit of experience about connecting pipe up there. I would ask the question, why'd you put a 5-inch line in there instead of a 2-inch? I know that I probably asked it in one of the meetings. I didn't understand that, but yeah. I'm not an engineer. You know, they claim that this was the right path to go. And I'm like, okay, sometimes you got to, trust it. You know, you can only question and verify so much.
Yeah. And
I'm not an engineer. Handed to it. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not an engineer either, but part of the process is to put the thing under the road, right? So that's a bit of an ordeal to dig that little tunnel or whatever and get it through and under the road. So I would imagine if you were going to do that, you might plan for whatever the future might hold. That's one reason for putting a larger pipe in.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what was going to happen? You know, I just don't know. You know, I've heard rumors and I haven't looked at it, at maybe down at that end of Accenture, that there was going to be a fire hydrant put up there, and fire hydrants need a 5-inch line.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
to service them. I don't know, but then again, you're coming off of a 2-inch line, which is most of the water supply lines here, you know, in the neighborhood, to a 5-inch. I'm like, what? I mean, I know that much, that's not a good way to do it, because the 2-inch can only provide so much pressure on it, and you know, to make the 5-inch more functional. Sure, you can take a 2-inch line and send water through a 5-inch line. Absolutely. I mean, it just fills it up and eventually flows. You lose your pressure, but hey,
a lot of pressure. Yes.
I'm not a water infrastructure guy.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, in my days, I would say my water's coming out of this side of the house. Give me my water box or where the connection is. Give me something I can connect into, and we're good to go.
Right.
Back then, people handle it. So yeah.
So here's go ahead. Go ahead with more, because I have a little bit of a side issue when you're ready. Okay, ready with this? Okay.
Go.
So here's a question. What part does the POA play in all this? Because, you know, the ACC is off their merry way looking at development projects here in the community. I don't recall anything in the documentation when I was on the ACC having to do with going to the water board and making sure that there is adequate capacity for this new lot. They are being built out still, and I don't think there's any connection right now, although it's now obvious that it really should be, right?
Yeah, I think somebody from the POA should have been involved from the beginning. Yeah, it was a water board issue, providing water services, falls under their jurisdiction. But at the same time, I don't, as you know, I'm just finishing up a house build within the POA area there. I didn't have to go to the POA to say, where is this water connection, or where is the sewer connection?
Right.
All I did was had the water company come out and say, this is where my water, this is the side where the water is coming out. This is the side where my grinder tank's going to be. Where do I tap into your sources?
Sure.
And they did their business. They they came out, dug, and they put a landscape box with both a shutoff valve for sewer and a shutoff valve for water, and say, this is where it's going to go. And then when I got an application, when the owner got their application and their meter, they, right after that shutoff valve goes the meter. And on the other, on one side of the meter it's the water supply company. On the other side of the meter, it's the homeowner side. So that's all I need to do is just tap into the meter.
Right,
but turn the valve on and the meter starts spinning.
Yeah, but there's a disconnect here.
Yeah,
there's a disconnect
it's super
you could
easy.
be approved.
The same.
You could be approved.
It was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it didn't. Yeah, the POA didn't get. Yeah, they approved my plan set. The POA did. The architectural, committee did. I don't know if they looked at that much detail to say, oh, on the left side of the house, your water line's going to come out. On the right side of your house is going to be your grinder tank. I usually like to keep them separate, or keep where the services are, are most required. I could have brought them both up in the same line, but we choose to split them and change them on each side of the house. It was not a big deal.
Well, they're also.
I don't know if the POA was involved in that or not. If they looked at it, or the ACC, and said, okay, this is where's water, because the only people after I started build that I worked with was the water company.
Yeah.
Where's your water line? Here's where I want to come to. You engineer it, you figure it out, and you guys go. I'm not the expert in that.
No, I don't.
They tapped into the water line.
Yeah.
And gave me that resource.
Right. I was on the ACC for a couple of years. I don't recall it ever coming up as an approved. In other words, you're looking at drainage. You're looking at how big of a house it is, whether it will fit in the community, has enough stone on its face, things like that. Literally, those are the things we're looking for.
Architectural appearances, right?
Appearance, right? And we don't deal with landscape, but there is nothing that says, okay, everything else looks good. Let's make sure we have capacity in our water and sewer facilities to allow you to move forward with this build, because there's a disconnect there. Well, you could go later on after you then go to you and then find out you don't have capacity. I mean, technically.
Well, I think they relied on, 2022 data that they probably had it. I mean, our CCN is pretty big, and people don't, people have to understand that it's a geographic area. It's not an individual site area.
Okay.
There are several lots that are not developed.
That's right. Yeah.
In the CCN.
Yeah.
But if it's in the CCN, you have to provide service to it. You have to. So if you're got a capacity problem like they claim now of being at 200 and whatever number of taps, 250 taps, let's just say, if you're fearing that you got a capacity problem, which is, everybody knows that I fought that, I'm like, that's impossible that we have a capacity issue, because our CCNN says that we have to deliver to all these vacant properties if somebody was to come in and build them all out. How is that possible? What am I missing here? If the CCN is geographically bound and you have all these undeveloped lots so far, many people on standby fees, I'm like, holy crap. What happens if all those people just got up one day and started building their house and demand water, and we added 50 sites to the water system? Do we have a problem at the plant? I just took it as assumption that the plant manager at the time said yes to that. Yes, we have the capabilities of producing that much water, right? Or filtering or processing, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's an assumption that people make because the CCN kind of defines the geographical nature of it. And you look at the plat, there's a lot of undeveloped lots that could have a single family home on it
Mhm.
that you have to provide water service to.
Right.
And you can't, you know, because when you go buy a piece of property, there's no deed restrictions in there. Shame on us if there is a capacity issue that either the water company's not telling the membership, because if I was to go over there and buy a piece of property and they said, oh, yeah, we're at capacity. Yeah, we're not going to service you with any water. But I just signed on with a builder. I just bought a lot and signed on with a builder to build a home.
Yeah.
And I come to find out, oh, we can't get water. What the hell? I just wasted all this money and time. Seriously? When the CCN defines the geographical boundaries, that becomes a water company issue that they need to update their plant. They need to update the plan.
And this
And,
kind of
going
similar
back
to
to this
what we
whole,
talk about, isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I mean, yeah, but they got to get their act together around that and say, hey, they can't stop it. They can't stop the developers. They can't. People own those lots. You know, they own the lots over there. And if people wanted to start building, it'd be a world of hurt. But they provide water service, no problem. You know, it's like it could have turned out to be a double-edged sword, possibly. I don't think there's a capacity issue. What I have discussed with several of the operators, old, just recently released operators and engineers, they're saying, you know, your plant needs an update, but you know, if it brings on 2 to 3, 4 a year, you're going to be fine as long as it's defined within the CCN.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have to make some capital improvements to the water plant. No doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. Everybody's talked about it for years, but nobody wants to take action to get it done.
Okay. So at this point, we framed it, I think, pretty well. Yesterday, the Madigan lawsuit was mentioned. It finally came, and
Right.
it's happening. So not a whole lot of information was provided. You know, there was a lot to talk about in the two meetings, but
yeah.
and
So
they
let me finish this timeline thing. So
sure. Oh yeah.
so we're in the summer of 2024. We got these members that are intervening, which is their right. Yeah, they can intervene. I wish they would have done it. You know, come to us and say, hey, I wish they would have sat down and say, here's our concerns. Well, here's our concerns, and maybe got some of those people involved with a legal opinion. Say the water company is going to get sued, which is what's happened.
Yeah.
I told people that, and that's what our legal team said it.
Yeah.
It was stated clearly in the exit document from the Carlton Group. You have a potential of getting sued. So we tried to fight to get the CCN, you know, completed. And it's 4 lots. I just said it's 4 lots. We're spending all this money for 4 lots. We should have just allowed it to go through and learned from it. This is one thing we don't do. We react instead of stepping back and saying, hey, if something like this comes up again, how are we going to handle it? What is a better way to handle it? Instead of everybody in a reaction mode, in a reaction mode, instead of an action mode, to say, well, maybe in the future, we need X, Y, Z, better dialogue, you know, have a community meeting about it and get more people involved, which didn't happen in this particular case. And it was unfortunate. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I see that in so many avenues where we go rogue, individuals go rogue within the community, and it ends up costing the community a lot of money instead of bringing these things up in a general session at either a board meeting or a members meeting and say, hey, I want to talk about the IRS because I think we submitted it wrong. Can we start what you advocate, Brian? Can we start a committee to look at it before we submit something downstream that's going to end up costing us a whole bunch of money? We don't do that. We do a knee-jerk reaction. I think that's what happened here at the start of this whole thing and as it progressed. So then we're into, so we're fighting, we're not fighting it, but we're submitting all these documents back and forth with our legal team because I'm told that we have a legal obligation to fight to get the CC application done. We were bound because of what was addressed in the board meeting. Now, did I go out and get a second opinion from a law firm, from another legal firm? I did. They said the same thing. I did that personally on my own. I got another advice from not anybody that's in the neighborhoods. I know what people are going to say. Oh, you went to talk to your next door neighbor, Keith Hopkinson, blah, blah, blah. No, I didn't. I went to a couple of real estate, and it's not the real estate attorney that eventually current Van Eman, solved. I do know the people in the community. They looked at it and said, "Yeah, you got a potential problem here. Potential problem of a lawsuit if this doesn't move forward." So I'm like, okay. So I did my homework and checked Carlton out. So now we're into October. October is the whole meltdown to support to get the TM involved. And this was something that I turned over to the TM team right away. I said, here's a list of things. You have all these other compliance issues that you're dealing with. Another one is the CCNN.
Yeah, you did
This
that,
was
I remember.
immediately turned over to them in a whole series of documents that were sent up to them, and they can sit there and deny it, but I have the facts. I have the records from
Google
the
Docs.
Dropbox.
Yeah.
I have the access records and so on, that they didn't do anything on the CCN. I know that Michael Parsons and the Carlton Group was trying to work with them. They lagged on it. We were trying to get it done. As a matter of fact, there were some meetings to say, let's just get this thing over with and get it done, with the temporary manager. Late December of 2024, the temporary manager starts backing away from it. And you can see in the correspondence from John Carlton and Aaron, they were saying, you cannot do that. They have a potential of getting sued. There was at one point, I asked, and I'm glad this is going out in the public, I asked Extenture, the temporary managers, I said, I need your legal counsel. And they were like, why? I said, well, it's good to have it on record, just in case you guys do something stupid and you guys do something that is not within the guidelines that we may need to sue. I need to know who to call. And they're like, well, you call us. And I'm like, you're not an attorney, and I don't trust what the hell you're doing in the first place. And they never sent it to me. But I knew in the back of my mind that they were going to screw this up. And it was their responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure the CCN, went through. There were hearing dates that were set by the ALJ in February to hear the case. And they should have moved forward with them, Brian, because they should have let the PUC come back, and not just PUC staff, let the PUC commissioners say, your CCNN application is denied. Let them go through the hearing and let the Madigan group on their application go fight it, and or have our group go fight it, and let the PUC, take it out of round, because that protects everybody. Yeah. Did they do that? Nope. They walked away and didn't even bother to go to the hearing. And that was done by Lanita Bates and Robert Sheets. And I told you from the beginning, I'm starting to name names in these things because I got the documentation to prove that point. I've got emails, and we've got a record coming from a former law firm. Yeah, they did not follow through on that like they said they were going to do. And keep in mind, who was running the temporary managers? Nobody. And they said, oh, we got board control of everything. We take over all operations and filings and this and that. I knew that they wouldn't follow through with this, and we'd end up in a lawsuit. And here it is. 2 weeks ago, Madigan Homes filed something against the WOWSC that could have been avoided back in March of last year. Could have been avoided in 2023 if people would have got off their butts.
Yeah. You didn't mention. Yeah. You didn't mention now, Carl. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Go ahead. No. And now we have this lawsuit, and it's going to be a fight. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be a fight.
Right.
And it's going to cost the Windermere Oaks Water Supply Corporation some money to defend themselves. And now the board can take a decision and say, we'll just give them the 4 applications, and it could go away, which would be my recommendation to do, because it's just 4 taps. Or they're going to spend thousands of dollars, our money, in fighting it. They should put it up for a board vote and have a couple people come in and explain the facts, not a board vote, and a member vote, and say which way you guys want to go on this thing. You want us to go fight it with our new law firm, Griffiths & Davis? Because they're going to bill us, and who's paying for it? Members. Regardless of which way it goes, members are going to pay for it. Because, we have to defend, we have to defend our position. And then defend the lawsuit of why did you approve it in 2023, then not follow through with making it happen in 2024. Yeah. So, go ahead with your question.
The only thing I was going to bring up when you were mentioning the TM and a couple members specifically, was that Carlos was there too, and he was a consultant. And I remember his testimony before the PUC. He's fully qualified to understand what you're talking about, the ramifications of not following through with this. So I'm not sure whether they put him aside at some point and went on without him or what, but if he was in the room when that was discussed, he should have hopefully would have.
He was on the phone call.
Oh,
In
really?
November on the 2 calls that I had, and
Okay.
you had a call with the temporary manager team
Yes, I did.
initially when they got their order, of course, and so did I. We were all had these individuals check the Dropbox. All the information about the CCN was in there. They had everything, and I told them, I said, we don't get this thing done, there's going to be a potential lawsuit. Hence, why did I ask for Accenture's legal counsel? Because I was going to reach out to them and said, you better get your TM team on board with this. I wasn't trying to do anything, for Madigan, everybody who wants to put out that can deal with me directly on that, because that was not the case. I was trying to avoid what happened 2 weeks ago when Madigan filed a lawsuit against us. Now we got to defend it. Now we got to pay for it.
Exactly.
That's what I was trying to do, is to say, hey guys, let the PUC, the ALJ, deny the application. You don't make that call. Do everything possible to get in front of that hearing and go for it. And you remember, John Carlton even told us that we had that executive session when we went out with John by the tennis courts. You were there, Scott was there, and myself, and he talked about that. He goes, yeah, just let the PUC come back and deny it. But you got to go through all the steps to get it done. And we didn't. And I blame this solely on 2 events: that member intervention, not as much as I do the temporary manager not following through and going through those hearings, in the 1st of February. And I told them on several occasions, you're going to have some problems here.
Did not the PUC eventually deny it, though? Didn't they not?
They denied it from a staff standpoint. The staff didn't support it.
Not the judge. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, not the judge. You got to go through a hearing.
They do.
It's a hearing. That's what was requested. Let's have a hearing. Let's put our side, and let's put the deniers.
Well, before
you have to have a hearing, and then let the commissions decide.
I'm sorry.
Like what we had, just like we had to do. Excuse me, just like we had to do for the temporary manager. It was the PUC side and then our side. I mean, let them fight it out. That would have been a clean avenue, because then you could have gone back to the Madigan group and say, hey, PUC denied the CCN expansion. Yeah. What are you going to do now? Now then it becomes his problem to go fight it.
Yeah.
Not ours. We did the best we could, but us falling down on that was the problem. And that's what they're going to hang their hat out.
Yeah, that does make sense. But, and I don't mean to countermand what you just said, what you just said, but I do remember reading in the docket not too long ago today that both sides had an opportunity to ask for a hearing and neither did. Yep. And so.
Yes, they did.
They did.
Yeah, there was a hearing schedule that was put forth.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I missed that.
I think it was February 5th. It was sometime in early February.
Yeah, no, this document I'm talking about just came out. So something else must have transpired.
There was supposed to be a hearing date. I could probably pull it up, but it's it's out there. It's out there. And besides it, why wasn't it done sooner or later and all this done right away? That was before Jeff Walker time. So, I would, again, we as the board were doing what we were told legally, that we had a legal obligation to continue this. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, a lot of people didn't trust those guys. I mean, I did. I had to. They were our legal counsel. We selected them, and I did do some homework on the outside of it, and got the similar story that he does have a case. It's probably a pretty strong one, but again, until you get in front of a judge, until you get a hearing,
you just don't know.
Nothing's decided.
Yeah,
you just don't know. At least go through the motions.
Yeah.
And now it's going to cost the membership a real lot.
Win or lose or draw, it will. Yes.
Yep. It's going to cost us legal fees unless they figure out a way to settle it, which is what I would do. I'd get in a room, settle it, and say, hey, and we should learn from this. This is why I started off. This is a good learning exercise. If this ever happens again, everybody knows the parameters, and you just you can't allow this. You can't allow these, these type of deals to go through without some member intervention. It's a member-owned utility. It's not a co-op. It's a member-owned utility. We all have a voice on how our money's been spent, and these things just need to, when it comes to that, it just needs to be, put forth.
Yeah, I agree.
I did agree with one of the things that Robert Sheets said in the meeting in January or February about any of the legal action. We'll come back to the members and say, what's it going to cost? And you guys vote if you want to pursue it or not. And I think we need to do a lot more of that. Mm-hmm. I really do. I think it needs to come to us and say, okay, we think here's the membership. It may not be a very good meeting. It could be an ugly meeting, but here's what we think is needs to happen. Mm-hmm. So, and let the membership decide if you want to pursue a legal activity against it or not, or a CCN or a tax audit or any of these big things that can get us into trouble down the way. Mm-hmm. We can't, I'm sorry, just letting board members make those decisions is wrong.
Right.
Dead wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we represent the community, but we're just one voice. We should have got this out to everybody in the community and done a better job. And it didn't. It's just, one of the mistakes. So how do you fix it?
Well, my experience on the board is that at least the community that showed up for our meetings was not necessarily wanting to help us make the right decisions, wanting us to succeed. I have a firm belief that they did not want us to succeed, and that if I could say it so bluntly, they were willing to burn it all down in order to move us out of the seat. It's as simple as that. It makes no sense to me, but and I can't explain it, but I believe that's what the impetus was there. And in fact, God, yes. I think if I could just finish that part, I believe the TM was the bulldozer, if you will, that was used to do just that. And now that we are out
of the, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, now that we're out of the seat, you see the TM being discredited. There's some good reason for it, and we'll talk about another subject maybe in a moment. Being discredited, their work is done. They don't want to be around anymore, and I could understand that because of the last hearing that we had of the last meeting we had with them in the room. But all of those coming together very quickly with the new board saying, "Oh, no problem, we can take it from here." So I mean, it's also very cut and dried and happening also quickly. That all kinds of points in that direction. There are no conspiracies, but there are no coincidences either, right?
No, exactly. And they just weren't looking at the big picture. I'm a big picture kind of guy. I saw a lot of this, and I'm not going to stand on my pulpit and say, "Hey, I told the PUC in May 18th memo on 2024, I had 6 months worth of revenue to maintain." And sure enough, come October, when the TM, hearings were about, you ran the numbers, you ran the books. Mm-hmm. We were losing money, not paying our vendors, and so on. Yeah. We should be grateful and kissing the ground that all those vendors stayed with us to continue to process.
It is amazing.
Produce clean water for the community, and the community doesn't see that. And I'm like, we were on pins and needles, making sure that these guys stuck around, and they stuck around because we kind of had this ace in the hole, which was our real estate sale that we were trying to get done since the first of the year. Check the history of when that was all going on. It started in January by me to say, well, let's go look at some real estate to sell because we're going to be out of money here with this new rate of appeal coming in.
Yeah.
There is no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. And I'll challenge anybody want to meet me in the pavilion for a open record day, I'll be more than happy to bring my charts and dialogues and so on, and we'll walk you through what was happening in the year 2024 with facts, and you be the judge of that. That it's and unfortunately, and I'm going to digress a little bit. Unfortunately, those facts that were released in the latest report that I sent out, that was sent up through the PUC, that director's report, if people understand how that report is formatted and puts together, it says a lot about what happens from revenue and usage and so on. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate that that public information got released, should have never been released. I might take legal action against the WOWSC on that because they released my public information about my usage, my address, my name, my account numbers, and so on. And that's just, to me, is downright wrong, because somebody could take that and we could get blitzed with all kinds of spam and stuff. I never authorized them to do that.
Yeah, and
but if you just look at those reports, yeah, go ahead.
Stop right there, Jeff. I do want to emphasize this. The TM assigned to us by the PUC described to us as being fully competent, fully versed in water rules and regulations for the state of Texas. Just last week, took the internal only operators report, which, as Jeff said, includes every member's personal information, their name, their address, their account number with the water utility, the amount of usage for the period. Every single person and other personal information was literally posted to a public forum, the PUC's interchange. It is there. I noticed a request for it to be taken down or somehow made invisible, but we understand that anything posted on that interchange is in place and I think must remain in place. I'm not sure if people can comprehend what just happened, or even if they know. Yeah. The only reason I know is because I set myself up as getting notifications automatically from the PUC when those things come out.
Well, that report you're talking about, if you remember, there was a lot of people that asked for it and we couldn't provide it. It was brought up in several meetings. We couldn't provide it because in its entirety, because it was a director's report. We couldn't provide it in an entirety. It was confidential because of what you just said, people's information. I only focused, and I talked about it in several meetings. I focused on only the first 4 pages that had all the details of what was going on financially and usage.
Right.
It was about how many gallons we processed, how many gallons were sold, and who, in categories, who bought them. Yeah. Not individually. Individually was in the details behind it, but I never looked at that. I didn't care if Brian Garceau used 10,000 gallons of water. I might be a little concerned about it. That was not my concern. My concern was the categories of people or the categories of usage. Like the first line in one of those reports was stunning because there was 58 users that didn't use any water.
That's right.
And I brought it up several times and people are like, why does that matter? It matters greatly because they're only getting charged $8. And you've got 50 users. That's 1/5 of our community who is only paying $300 and some odd dollars in total. 8 times 50, whatever it is. How right there should be a red flag going, oh shit. But we still got to maintain water processing capabilities for all of our members, just in case all 60 of those turn it on. So we still have a cost of producing it, but they weren't contributing because of the rate structure. And then the next category was another 60 users who used the minimum. Look at what they contributed. It was like $5,000.
Right.
Wow. That's 110 users. 1/3 contributed $7,000 to our bottom line. That is insane amount right there. People should have stood up and go, oh, so it's a lack of revenue. Yes, no shit. Right there, those 2 lines. So I didn't mind those first 4 pages because they had no account information. It was the other 94 pages and specifically what they released to the PUC in this case, because I saw it. I was just beside myself to give that much detail away.
Like any document of that size. And it's huge. Right. It's huge.
None of that. If you go to the website, how many times did we get hammered about, transparency? Well, we couldn't put that on there because of that reason.
Yeah.
That director's report, we could have put individual pages on there. Yeah. But, and I talked to them, they were available those first 4 pages, because I printed them out because there was no account information. There was nobody's information, no individual. There were groups of people. That's all there was.
Because
water processed, water sold, and amount of revenue we collected.
yes, what I was going to say is it's such a large document that you provide an executive summary at the top. And if the executive wants to drill down, that's fine. But they don't have time to go through my water bill.
Which is exactly how it was laid out. Page 1 was, and then as you drill down, it got further. That's why the first 4 pages put the groups. After that, it started to get more detail. And
right.
Never would I send the other 96 pages. Yeah.
And the other point there is, yes, those are summary numbers, both the money part and the usage part, but the rest of the document is there to substantiate those numbers.
That's correct.
This is an important point. It's a standard type of operator's report, and you could depend on the summary because the numbers below substantiate it. And if you want to prove that to yourself, you can take that summary level number and go down just like a financial report and go down to the detail and see that's supported there.
Right. I mean, it was 100 pages. It's 100 pages. I mean, so that the first 4 were the summary, and the rest were just the detail of all 300 plus users, and what they were doing, how they were spending, how were they, and it was formatted. Yeah, but to release that, bad, very bad. But if people would I have no problem meeting people at the pavilion. I have some of those old directors' reports. I can walk them through because I studied them tremendously when I got into this thing, to say, how in the hell are we losing so much money every month? It's because we're not, and it's substantiated, the whole rate appeal crap, that we weren't generating enough revenue.
Sure.
And here is this thing. So they can do a rate study all day long, but if they don't take into consideration those 50 plus users that use 0 water, that's a big problem. Especially with the refunds going on. Now, if you take away the refunds, they'd have a $75 bill or an $80 bill, whatever it is. They'd have an $80 bill. 80 times, that's 80 times 50. That's $4,000 versus 400. Big difference. Big difference.
Yep.
But until those refunds are gone, wow,
It'd be a tough slog.
It's just amazing that they released that. First 4 pages, if anybody's out there, when they listen to this, get the director's report, see it. If you have any questions about it, call me. I spent a great deal of time with the people who put that together and understand how it was put together and why it's there.
Yeah, the damage is done. You may as well take advantage of it.
Yeah, it's an executive summary in the first 4 pages. The next 96 pages are all about details, and they released a whole bunch of it about our account information. Somebody should raise holy hell about it. They should raise holy hell to the board, and they should raise holy hell to the temporary manager, because that got released in March and it was under the new board's watch. That's bad. Yeah, we didn't do that.
So let's try and I appreciate what you're saying. All right, let's try and wrap it up here. But I would love to have you back to talk about and Scott, frankly, to talk about our experience with the temporary manager, because we had such
I'm ready for that one.
We had such high hopes at the start. And I really want to drill into it, Jeff, because I want to go back to the PUC hearing where we testified, where Chairman Gleason wrapped it up, because he had specific things to say about it. And I want to get this all highlighted and then watch what happened after that and get that out and talked about. So let's do that next time.
You and I were front center on that one, sitting at the table, hearing the questions and so on during that day. And just like you, I was like amazed at some of his comments, but I was amazed at some of the bullshit, I'm sorry to use that language on this podcast, but that was presented by the PUC staff, which was not relevant and taken totally out of context to make that happen. But
Well, we'll get into
I
that
think
in detail.
I think your earlier statements about, they were brought in to take us out, and, that's fine. Whatever. I was going to leave on my own terms, and I was going to leave after my 2-year commitment, which is about roughly when I left.
Well, like I said, Jeff, and not to cut it off there, but let's go back to our topic, because what you're talking about is definitely part of the TM discussion. And we will get to it.
Okay.
We will get to it, and we will study first. We'll be ready.
I've got my notes on that one. Like, it right into my brain. I was like, seriously?
Yeah.
But anyways, okay.
So let's wrap this up. We got a lawsuit. How do you think this is going to progress here? Just briefly, and then we'll close off the podcast.
Well, I think that Mannington is going to pursue it in court, that the WOWSC let them down. They let them down, and that's not my opinion. That's what I've read. I mean, we got a legal opinion that they kind of had a contract, and verbal contracts in the state of Texas are pretty valid. It's on public record that it got approved for the expansion and so on. It's in the minutes, and we didn't follow through. It's going to be it'll be an interesting go around. I don't know where it's going to end up legally, but that's for the courts to decide. I'm not an attorney.
Yeah. And it is in Burnett County.
I don't play one in the neighborhood.
Burnett County civil case. I don't play one in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
It's a Burnett County civil case, right?
Yes.
Which means,
civil case.
What kind of time are we looking at here?
I think they'll, with an attorney pressing on it, you got to remember that the attorney can press.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, can press. And, he can make some things happen and get some rulings done pretty quick.
Okay.
And it all depends on how much they get stalled or how much information takes them to get it. I mean, we were not the best at record keeping.
True.
About the events that took place. A lot of those people that were involved in it have moved on. Former board members, former general managers.
That's right. Yeah.
They've moved to other places. How fast do you track them? Carlton Group, I don't know what it's going to be as far as attorney-client privilege, but they're going to have to divulge what they knew, what they recorded, and I would assume they are, in their conversations with the temporary manager team, with the board at the time, and what we tried to do. But again, what we tried to do was follow legal advice, try to push it through. We went on the assumption it's 4 lots. We were trying to avoid a lawsuit, and that's where I was kind of pushing it, was to not have another big lawsuit against the WOWSC, and sure enough, here it is.
Yeah, I'm sure we appreciate that, but we have what we have.
Yep. So.
All right. So okay. Jeff,
thank you very much.
I really enjoyed this. What hasn't been easy. I could tell we were both under a little stress in some of these questions, and you divulging the history and your experiences. It's not easy stuff, but I do appreciate your willingness to come on and be so open about it. I think it's important, and I'm hoping people will, as they start to catch on, will be able to get a better understanding. And by the way, these podcasts are going out audio version to 4 other streaming services every time one goes out. So these are great topics. I can't wait to get into the TM. Honestly, it's
I'm with you on that one.
Oh yeah. So start your research now. One thing
that'll be a good one. Looking forward to that one. Okay. Thanks, Brian.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Jeff. Here's the music. No talkie. See ya.
Oh yeah.